You'd better pray you don't brush up on this video. You might have to squat to death on the loo. I've worked a slight magic on the progress bar, and to talk about is the Korean sci-fi drama Doomsday Rider that just went live, and Kim Woo-bin is really cool as 5 to 8. The story begins in 2071 when a comet collides with Earth, subsequently submerging most continents under the sea and turning Korea into a desert. Only 1% of the population survives. Afterwards, the world is engulfed in yellow sand, making it necessary to wear oxygen masks to live normally. In this post-apocalyptic world, the Ming group is forced to create a massive air core capable of converting ammonium oxygen into breathable oxygen. Due to the scarcity of resources, people are divided into 3 classes: general, special, and core. Those not chosen by the Air Corps are left to survive as refugees. With the shortage of goods, a special industry emerges: the hunters, who live by plundering. Conversely, couriers are tasked with delivering supplies and even help the elderly with their oxygen needs amidst these troubled times. This means that to be a courier, have to be quick and calm or we'll end up the opposite of him. And he is none other than the legendary 5 to 8 of Couriers. But some people take the risk, and the unlucky courier in front of us has been targeted. These bandits aim not only to rob supplies but also to steal the courier's QR code, a symbol of identity that opens many doors. Just as the courier was about to lose his right hand, a loud came on and 5 to 8 came in. However, this group of people do not believe in evil, wanting to challenge their soft underbelly. In the next moment, at this time, the hunter seems to be possessed by Yan Xuanying, and there is really no bullet in the 5/8's gun, and he has thus retrieved a life. A weak little girl lies on the roadside. 5 to 8 immediately helps her with her oxygen, bringing her back to consciousness. Seeing the book in the girl's hands, 5 to 8 asks what it is. The girl says at this point that she wants to be a courier like 5 to 8 and give help to refugees, unaware that in front of her is courier 5 to 8. 5 to 8 cares deeply for refugees because he too originated from their ranks. Years ago, the refugee district suffered a brutal massacre. Despite 5/8's skills, he was overwhelmed in battle and shot down. Waking up among corpses, recalling a gun he had given to a fellow refugee, he found it just in time to eliminate the assailants before they could finish him off. This tragic scene is one he could never forget, as the order for the massacre came directly from the chairman of the Ming group, Ryu Jae-jin. Chairman Ryu came up with the idea because of the migration, but the Air Corps was far from enough to accommodate all the refugees. And now, the goal of Courier 5 to 8 is to take down the Ming group. To achieve this, one must first become a courier, then obtain a QR code to gain entry into the Ming group to execute their plan. Among the refugees, there was another who dreamed of becoming a courier, and his name was Sa-wol. In his quest to become a courier, he challenged others everywhere, fortunately with decent success, but his boldness grew, daring even to challenge 5 to 8, outright seeking a challenge. Upon returning home, he was scolded by his sister, who was Major Sa-wol, the headquarters commander and Sa-wol's lifesaver. Under Sa-wol's protection, Sa-wol and his younger sister, Young Sa-wol, managed to live in relative peace. To minimize trouble, Sa-wol decided to ground Sa-wol for 15 days, but this grounding nearly cost the siblings their lives. That day, Sa-wol was mocking Sa-wol, locked in his room, when suddenly a delivery notification came through. Opening the door, she found it was Courier 5 to 8. Surprised, she asks for a photo with him, but Sa-wol inside the house scoffs at the idea. Not long after 5 to 8 leaves, the doorbell rings again, signaling a delivery. Sa-wol thinks it's 5 to 8 returning and opens the door. Unexpectedly, several armed thugs enter. They are quite professional, first destroying the surveillance, then pulling out the memory card, then injecting Sa-wol with a potion, but the syringe is knocked away by Sa-wol. Seeing this, Sa-wol desperately kicks at the door trying to rescue her, but without a QR code, he can't open it. Hearing the noise, the thugs outside approach with guns drawn. Sa-wol suddenly bursts out of the door and struggles with the thugs. In the chaos, Sa-wol grabs a gun from one of the thugs and kills them all. but when he checks on Sa-wol, he finds she's been shot and is slowly losing consciousness with a lingering attachment to this world. Sa-wol is overwhelmed with guilt, but in his grief, he doesn't notice someone approaching from behind. The mastermind behind the kidnapping is Ryu-suk, the heir to Chen Ming group. After the attack, 5-8 discovers the situation. He immediately checks the door, effortlessly eliminates the remaining thugs, and notices a tattoo on the back of their necks. At this point he realized that Sa-wol was still conscious and immediately took him back to the base, while informing 4-1 to get ready. Under 4-1's care, Sa-wol finally woke up and was anxious to go home to check on his condition, but was stopped by 5-8. Sa-wol's condition doesn't allow much movement, but he insists on going home, so 5-8 reluctantly orders him to be given a sedative. However, when leaving, the metallic sheen from Sa-wol's leg wound catches 5-8's attention. Meanwhile, Zhang Shui learns of the incident at home and rushes back. With a heavy heart, she returns home only to find a cold body on the ground. Her sister has been dead for some time, and Sa-wol is nowhere to be found. Her subordinate reports that this was not an isolated incident, seemingly connected to recent kidnappings in the general district. After dealing with his sister's affairs, Sa-wol went to find Grandpa, as Sa-wol often hung out with a few friends here, yet Sa-wol was nowhere to be found. Then she summoned 5-8 because he was the only witness. Ostensibly 5-8 is a witness, but at the moment he feels he has become a suspect. The reason Sa-wol suspected him was because only Sa-wol's body was found at the scene. However, simulations showed that there were signs of a struggle involving at least 5 people at the scene, and 5-8 did not share the details with her. Ending the investigation there, Sa-wol returned home, feeling extremely guilty for not being able to protect his sister. Sa-wol did not blame him but felt that she had been too strict with Sa-wol, so she handed him a backpack and asked him to find his friends. Only with them could Sa-wol be his true self. Before he left, she gave Sa-wol a pendant containing his sister's ashes to ease his longing, but before he could reach his friend's house, Sa-wol was knocked unconscious with a blow to the back of his head. Luckily, his friends arrive in time to save Sa-wol, who is seriously injured, but the 2 dumb brothers are also seriously injured, and Useless comes back with a face full of injuries. Thus, under the care of his friends, Sa-wol gradually recovered. Unexpectedly, while the brothers' wounds had not yet healed, Sa-wol had almost completely recovered. At this time, far away from here, in the Chen Ming group, Ryu-suk is summoning a mysterious person, who was Courier 5-7. It turned out he was the key figure in a kidnapping case in the ordinary district, specialized in unlocking doors for kidnappers. The door to Sa-wol's house had been opened by him, and by this time, 5-7 had developed a sense of withdrawal, for he felt a pang of conscience. However, Ryu-suk promised that after one last job as the unlocker, he would be granted permanent residency in the core district, risking his life as the prerequisite. While they were talking, 5-8 had already begun to act. Having located the positions of the Triangle Group members, he then led a Couriers team straight into the Triangle Group space, where all the members were annihilated. They also uncovered a shocking secret. The Triangle Group was conducting human experiments. The kidnapping case in the ordinary district quickly came to the attention of Chairman Ryu, who seemed to have guessed that his son was involved, although it appeared his son's principles differed from his own. In the next migration program, he advocated the inclusion of refugees in the Air Corps. Ryu-suk, on the other hand, shows the opposite opinion and vows to make his father approve of him one day. The reason for his extremity was that he had contracted a rare disease, requiring daily blood transfusions to survive, a fact unknown to his father. Elsewhere, 5-8 found Grandpa and brought him a bottle of soil from District A, revealing they were old acquaintances. 5-8, knowing that Sa-wol was with Grandpa, produced the bullet that had hit Sa-wol. Suspecting Sa-wol was a genetic mutant due to his unusual skull structure and rapid recovery rate. Grandpa also mentioned that when Sa-wol was found, he was essentially in a radiation zone, but they couldn't confirm his genetic mutation right away. During their conversation, Sa-wol suddenly discovered she had lost access to the kidnapping case files. It turned out to be an order from above. Unexpectedly, her subordinates had already backed up the case files. The sergeant jokingly suggested they should take a long vacation after this case. It was the word sabbatical in that sentence that seemed to make Sa-wol think of something. She immediately had her subordinates retrieve the courier's vacation records for the day of the incident, finding that only 5-7 had been on vacation that day, making him the prime suspect. Unbeknownst to them, at that moment, 5-7, racked with guilt, had hanged himself in his own courier van. 5-8, happening to pass by, saw this and rescued 5-7. The moment he saved 5-7, He had realized that 5 to 7 was the unlocker. He wanted to ask more, but 5 to 7 was reluctant to reveal anything further. Just as 5 to 7 was about to change his mind and reveal more, 5 to 7 died mysteriously. The puppet master behind all this was none other than Ryu Suk of Chen Ming Group. It turned out that Ryu Suk's subordinates had all been implanted with a device that allowed him to take their lives at any moment. At this time, Sa-wol was still blaming himself for his sister's death when Useless suddenly arrived to hand him a flyer. He opened it to find that Chen Ming Group was recruiting new couriers. At that moment, Sa-wol felt his dream might finally come true. Unaware that this was all part of a grand conspiracy, no one would have thought that couriers would be so in demand during the apocalypse. With thousands applying for just one position, Sa-wol, a refugee, was one of those who signed up. And to his surprise, 2 of his friends were also going to participate.
Insufficient. Insufficient.
It's Sa-wol's turn, but he passes easily. But the next level is the key. Before signing up, Sa-wol had sought out 5 to 8, expressing his desire to join the couriers and asking how he could win. Seeing Sa-wol's determination, 5 to 8 wrote a coordinate on a poster and told him to prove his worth. Then left. When Sa-wol arrived at the coordinates, he found the couriers' training gym, unaware that it also served as the secret base for 5/8's courier team. When they had held a meeting after Sa-wol had left, the people had also learned, through the projections, that there was a high probability that Sa-wol's sinews contained a metal gene mutation, and as they speak, Sa-wol somehow learns of this place, and she quietly sneaks up to the door of the training hall with her men, and before they can make their move, 5 to 8 suddenly opens the door, and by now the couriers inside are training, and the situation is all normal. Sa-wol revealed her purpose and wished to continue their previous conversation. Seeing no ill intent, 5 to 8 disclosed the truth about 5/7's suicide, not an official case of overworked death. He also handed Sa-wol a paper with a triangle drawn on it, the same tattoo found on the kidnappers. All this Sa-wol doesn't know. He's still researching the legends of the couriers, and Useless words are even more shocking.
Once you go through that gate, you become pulp. They beat you up good until you lose yourself, and they never let up.
They beat you, really?
The guy who wrote that book,
Everyone?
he spent a whole week in a coma.
When Sa-wol, nervous, opened the training room door, he saw only 5 to 8 and 4 to 1. The stories were misleading. There was no group beating, only harsh training. The first challenge was hitting a fast-moving baseball, but when the training began, Sa-wol couldn't even dodge the ball, let alone hit it. After much training, he was bruised and begging for mercy, insisting it was impossible for humans. Then, 5 to 8 had a guy demonstrate, who not only didn't dodge but also easily hit the ball. After some time practicing, Sa-wol's speed increased, and he could easily hit the ball, even with energy to spare. Then, the first round of courier selection began, with dozens of contestants fighting in a closed room, where only one could advance. Sa-wol stood out among the contestants, securing a spot in the next round along with 7 others. The second round was crucial, involving actual deliveries and ensuring the safe arrival of packages, with criminal hunters waiting for them. More frighteningly, in the race, contestants and hunters could freely attack each other, determining 2 advances. Chen Ming Group monitored the event, inviting couriers to watch intense, with Ryu Suk attending. As the race began, Sa-wol noticed the route was a straight line, but it was far from simple. With the countdown to 0, competitors rushed out, quickly spreading out. Sa-wol's poor vehicle immediately fell behind. Hunters appeared, attacking furiously, quickly resulting in competitor casualties. Car 4 was brutally overturned, destroyed. Contestants began to fight back, with hunters falling and a hunter vehicle being blown up. An unexpected explosion in a building ahead threw debris, crushing a competitor. Luckily, Sa-wol's driving skills allowed him to dodge all debris, but then, a building collapsed, blocking the way. With only a few cars making it through before the collapse, Sa-wol made a quick decision to turn into another road. A voice informed him he was off-route, but this wasn't against the rules. The chase continued, with contestants now ruthlessly attacking each other. Car 5 was knocked sideways by Car 1 and blocked hunter fire, ultimately exploding. To Sa-wol's surprise, even off-route, he was pursued by hunters. Caught in a pinch, in a critical moment, Sa-wol braked, causing his car to drift, sending several motorbike hunters flying. One more vehicle to deal with, as Sa-wol's car was pushed backward by a black car. Just before being hit, Sa-wol swiftly turned and accelerated, emerging first from the building and returning to the race route. In the next moment, although his car was overturned, Sa-wol remained fearless. He grabbed the package and ran towards car 3, which was stuck in the mud, unable to move. After explaining his purpose, he immediately went behind the car to push, while also asking for a ride from car 3. Before they could push the car out, hunters had already arrived. Seeing the urgency of the situation, Sa-wol backed against the object behind him, pushing with his legs. With some effort, car 3 was freed from the mud, but the hunters had already attacked. Under the intense attack, the driver, Chen, unfortunately fell out of the car, and then the car was forced to stop. Sa-wol quickly switched to the driver's seat, but then he saw Chen desperately defending against the hunters' attacks nearby. While he hesitated, car 1 sped past from behind, instantly overtaking them to become first. Now, should he go back to save Chen? He was already in second place, and driving straight to the finish line would win him the race. But going back for Chen would mean they both finished second. The couriers in the tent watched his decision. After some thought, he put the car in reverse, quickly returning to Chen side. With the car's cover, Chen successfully got back on. They then successfully reached the finish line, but the judges announced Chen as the one to advance. Sa-wol, who finished alongside, did not pass the race because his car was damaged, and the delivery box was also damaged. However, there was a twist in events. Contestant No. 3 withdrew due to an arm injury, and Sa-wol was allowed to advance to the final round under the courier team's recommendation. Among the many contestants, Sa-wol, a refugee, fit Ryu-suk's plan better than 5 to 7 and was more suitable to become the unlocker. To implement his conspiracy, Ryu-suk met with Sa-wol, stating that for the relocation plan to proceed smoothly, he needed all residents' personal information, but without official documents. Sa-wol hesitated to hand over the information. Sensing a plot, Ryu-suk immediately makes a phone call to the Minister of Defense, and it turns out that the two have been in cahoots for some time. Under superior orders, Sa-wol complied, and Ryu-suk smiled triumphantly. But his smile didn't last long, as 5 to 8 received news that an electric generator would enter Area A. After receiving a signal from his team, 5 to 8 stood in the path of the escort, mistaken by the driver for a troublesome refugee. In the next moment, the escort personnel were quickly dealt with. The courier team's goal was not to seize the electric generator but to destroy it. An explosion occurred, and the electric generator was reduced to ashes. Ryu-suk's plan was disrupted, and he flew into a rage, nearly Wu's steward to self-destruct on the spot. When he opened the door behind him, he was met with a view of experimental subjects. Perhaps the explosion of the electric generator foiled his plan. He brutally manipulated the equipment to over-oxygenate the people inside, killing the subjects within just a few breaths. The day after, a convoy of live broadcast trucks slowly made their way into the refugee zone, set to live stream the final match between Sa-wol and Nam. This news couldn't be hidden from the courier squad, especially 5 to 8, who keenly sensed a motive behind it. They had won before without any live coverage, so could this broadcast be a scheme by Ryu-suk? To be cautious, he instructed the courier team to scout the different zones after work, while Grandpa also tuned into the broadcast. As the Adam brothers adjusted the big pot lid, the image in their house became clearer. Just then, Useless rushed home to tell Grandpa about the live broadcast trucks outside, questioning the need to fiddle with old equipment at home. But Grandpa preferred the safety of staying in, a decision that ultimately saved them. At the live broadcast, every refugee viewer received oxygen and food, attracting a massive crowd. Besides Ryu-suk, the president also attended the final match. Before the match began, the courier squad noticed something odd. 2 unlicensed cars heading towards a location. 5 to 8 immediately intercepted them, and in moments, the unidentified persons were down. One injured individual attempted to retrieve a remote control for a suicide bombing, but 5 to 8 stopped him. discovering the man was a member of the Triangle group involved in kidnapping cases. After confirming his identity, 5 to 8 removed a small bomb from the man's neck, preventing the explosion. Meanwhile, the Courier finals kicked off, garnering unprecedented attention from the refugees. The match was to continue until one party could no longer fight. With the referee's order, the two began to move. At first it was more of a test, but soon Sa-wol fell into a disadvantage. Immediately after Jeonnam's punches rained down, Sa-wol could only defend passively and at this point was only taking a beating. The crowd in and out of the arena couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment, not realizing that this was a deliberate move on Sa-wol's part to see how Jeonnam would come out of his stance. While he was taking a beating, the live broadcast site in the refugee area had a lot of Triangle Corps people at some point, and it seemed like they were going to make some kind of move. At the beginning of the second round, Sa-wol intentionally provoked Jeonnam. Jeonnam's anger soared straight while Sa-wol didn't dodge and took Jeonnam's punches hard. Jeonnam got more and more excited and almost knocked Sa-wol down. By the end of the second round, Sa-wol had a horrible scar on his head and was showing the color of metal. Seeing this, 4 to 1 rushed to bandage his head wound anomaly never to be exposed. At this point Sa-wol receives word from 5 to 8 that he has learned of their plans from the Triangle members who were captured alive, namely the refugee kidnapping plan. The Courier squad rushed to prevent the tragedy at the live broadcast sites. The third round of the final also started and this time Sa-wol started to fight back and he easily avoided Jeonnam's fast punches. Jeonnam misses with a single attack, and he's getting a bit out of shape himself. Sa-wol kicked Jeonnam to the ground. Jeonnam then tries to give Sa-wol a flying kick, but his aim was already seen through. The next moment, Jeonnam never got up. Sa-wol won the match and happily took off the gauze to wipe the blood, but the unusual forehead wound was revealed. Ryu-suk sees this, and at this time the live broadcast site a loud explosion rang out. All the refugees gathered at the live broadcast site within the refugee zone were all blown up and killed, and when the Courier team arrived, everything was already too late. The scene reminded 5 to 8 of his own survival from a similar tragedy years ago. A moment of sheer despair. Seeing the tragic scene after the explosion, Sa-wol suddenly remembered what Woo's steward had said to Ryu-suk during the finals.
Is this plan proceeding?
Yes. Yes, sir. The plan is proceeding.
Making it clear that this was undoubtedly related to Ryu-suk. The Courier squad interrogated the Triangle group captive but got nothing out of him. 5 to 8 decided to take a direct approach, which was to capture Ryu-suk. But before they could act, Sa-wol came to them. After her examination, they found out that the Triangle group captive had undergone brain surgery, leading them to deduce that all members of the Triangle group had undergone the same procedure. 5 to 8 showed Sa-wol the detailed information about the refugee plan stored in the captive's phone, but some files were locked, and they were unable to decrypt them without Sa-wol's help. Sa-wol bluntly asked the Courier squad about their goal, and 5 to 8 did not hide their intention. They aimed for a world without the Ming group, as Ming does not tolerate the existence of refugees. After the finals, Sa-wol went to Ming headquarters for a medical checkup, finally achieving the identity he had long fought for. Then, he returned to his new home with the trophy and supplies. Upon opening the box, he found a smartphone and a tablet, eager to read the Courier manual, but the days of struggle had left him too exhausted, and he soon fell asleep. Unbeknownst to him, Ryu-suk was equally excited, for he had now obtained Sa-wol's blood sample and bodily information. Ryu-suk intended to use Sa-wol's blood for new human experiments, hoping to cure his own disease once the experiments succeeded. Before he could celebrate for long, his father called him for a talk. The chairman mentioned he would meet with the president to announce the relocation plan ahead of schedule, as he had said before, planning to officially welcome all refugees. This was obviously not in line with Ryu-suk's plan, which had no place for refugees. However, since he had not inherited the Ming group, he had to follow his father's arrangements, but he had already been playing a bigger game in secret. Even his father couldn't see through him. After joining, Sa-wol met with 5 to 8 face-to-face for the first time, where 5 to 8 shared the Courier squad's plan and revealed the true face of Ming group to Sa-wol. Whether Sa-wol would join them depended on him. Meanwhile, Ryu-suk successfully obtained all residents' data from Sa-wol. Next, Ming would vaccinate the refugees to further advance the relocation plan. Unbeknownst to them, this was another one of Ryu-suk's schemes. At this time, an accident occurred at the Courier training center, where a group of unidentified individuals attacked, releasing the captive. Both sides suffered casualties in the ensuing battle, and the Courier squad quickly killed the last enemy. but the captive had already escaped in a car. After returning to their base, he contacted his superiors with his phone and then fell asleep from exhaustion. Soon after, he was awakened by Woo's steward, one of Ryu-suk's men. Woo's steward was surprised at how he had escaped.
So how the hell did you get out of there?
The rescue team arrived.
A team? No team was sent.
But it was too late. 5 to 8 had already found him, and the next moment, a gun was pointed at his head by Sa-wol. It turned out that the earlier rescue was a ploy by the courier squad to draw out the person behind the scenes. Initially, Woo's steward was defiant, but after some threats, he immediately capitulated and revealed Ryu-suk's plan, route, and intelligence. After a period of human experiments, Ryu-suk made a significant breakthrough. Patients with the same disease as his showed signs of improvement after being injected with a solution made from Sa-wol's blood. This breakthrough excited Ryu-suk, as it meant his disease might finally be curable. Next, he would implement his plan against the refugees, but the courier squad would not sit idle. That day, they all received a message from 5 to 8 to take action. The next moment, the courier squad quickly caught up with the air purification vehicles, and through measurements, found that all the air purifiers were releasing harmful substances. This was undoubtedly the work of Ryu-suk. The fact that he dared to release hazardous materials on a wide scale shows that Ryu-suk has been a bit of a dog. But this phenomenon couldn't be effectively stopped by the understaffed courier squad, so they needed to eliminate Ryu-suk first, as they already had his schedule, and Woo's steward was quite cooperative. Sure enough, Ryu-suk appeared at the medical checkup site. Just as he got out of his car, 5 to 8 had already aimed at him, deciding to take Ryu-suk out himself. However, just as he was about to shoot, Ryu-suk walked into a tent, and 5 to 8 lost sight of him and couldn't make the shot. Meanwhile, other members of the courier squad also began to move. They directly rushed to the air purification base, copying all the data and destroying the control system, immediately stopping all the air purifiers. Ryu-suk appeared again, and 5 to 8 locked onto him once more. However, just as he was about to shoot, a gun was pressed against him. 5 to 8 made a snap decision to pull the trigger, but he missed, alerting the enemy. Bodyguards quickly surrounded Ryu-suk, and 5 to 8 lost his chance. As more and more security personnel appeared, both sides engaged in intense gunfire. Realizing Woo's steward had betrayed them, 5 to 8 immediately rushed downstairs trying to get close to Ryu-suk. With the protection of his bodyguards, Ryu-suk successfully got back into his car, and 5 to 8 no longer had the chance to take Ryu-suk out. On the other side, Sa-wol was also trying to stop Ryu-suk in her own way. She went alone into the core area, and Chairman Ryu was the person she was looking for. She straightforwardly exposed Ryu-suk's conspiracies. All the kidnappings and murders in the refugee area were Ryu-suk's doing, all linked to the Chen Ming group. The chairman realized that if not stopped, Chen Ming's century-old foundation would be destroyed. Therefore, he decided to sign the relocation agreement with the president ahead of schedule. After the agreement was signed, the government would lead the future relocation plan, but Ryu-suk found out about this. When he arrived, the president was preparing to leave, and Ryu-suk rushed to see his father, loudly questioning why he did this. The chairman emphasized again that Chen Ming's technology should be used to save people, not harm them. Ryu-suk finally regretted his actions. At that moment, the Minister of National Defense appeared and took the opportunity to deliver a fatal blow to the chairman, and the situation completely spiraled out of control. Ryu-suk understood that there was only one path left for them, which was to take control of the president and seize command. Soon, Ryu-suk framed the courier squad for the chairman's death, and 5 to 8 and others were fully wanted. During this period, courier delivery was suspended, and Chen Ming would distribute supplies to various districts. Seeing the situation so grave, 5 to 8 understood they had no way out. The only solution was to directly attack the core area and take out Ryu-suk, the main culprit. After announcing his plan, Grandpa immediately produced the design map of the core area, which he and the chairman had designed together but later parted ways due to disagreements. But on the eve of their action, an accident occurred. The refugees who had been vaccinated began dying in droves. A very serious situation. Seeing this, Grandpa rushed to the rooftop and rang the long-unused alarm bell. The courier squad quickly responded, rushing to each medical checkup site. They fired shots into the air from hiding, causing chaos at the medical checkup sites to stop the residents from being vaccinated. Just as Sa-wol was about to act, he discovered Useless had been captured, he fired shots into the air to create chaos. Running towards Useless while taking off his mask to draw attention, Useless knew that once Sa-wol's face was exposed, he would be mercilessly shot by those people. He immediately went forward to stop Sa-wol, but a bullet stopped him from intervening. Before dying, he told Sa-wol to run, but Sa-wol, having a deep bond with him from childhood, could not leave him behind. Sa-wol's loud plea couldn't bring his friend back to life, and Sa-wol was knocked unconscious by security on site and taken back to the Chen Ming base. The news quickly reached Sa-wol's ears. With the president captured and her brother taken, she made a final decision under complex circumstances. On the other side, the courier squad was ready to go. Just as they were saying goodbye to Grandpa, Sa-wol appeared. For the first time, both parties had the same goal. Everyone knew this might be a one-way trip, but they were fearless, as their homeland and people needed their protection more than ever. Relying on Grandpa's design map, they quickly reached the core area. Upon arrival, the couriers took off their disguises and donned their courier uniforms, representing their identity. That day, a bomb made the moon and the sky of the core area blur. Then, the entire sky lit up with halos, and many smoke bombs suddenly appeared underground. The next moment, couriers in black descended from the sky. The guards at the door instantly shot numerous times. While the courier squad remained unharmed, both sides engaged in intense battle, and more guards surged from underground. At this moment, a convoy arrived quickly, its heavy shell immediately blocking the guards' fire, allowing the courier squad to take cover. The next moment, reinforcements from the vehicles also quickly took position, led by Sa-wol's group. Then they split into two teams, Sa-wol leading one to rescue the president, while 5 to 8 attacked from the front. The intense battle was quickly made known to Ryu-suk, and Woo's steward was also on his way to support. Suddenly, all the lights in the corridor went out.
Who's there?
Who do you think? I'm the delivery man here to get you.
As soon as his words ended, a delivery team emerged from the shadows, unleashing intense firepower and instantly killing several guards. Woo's steward tries to resist, but is shot down with 4-to-1 precision. Then, the iron door of the laboratory was forcefully pushed open, and the legendary courier appeared. Even though they were outnumbered, they still couldn't hit 5 to 8. He darted behind a pillar, pulled out a bullet from his bosom, and swiftly slid it towards the enemy's feet. The next moment, he shot the bullet on the ground, causing it to scatter like a storm of pear blossoms needles, instantly killing all surrounding enemies. On the other side, Sa-wol successfully rescued the president and captured the Minister of National Defense, then persuaded Ryu-suk to surrender at the door. Hearing this news, Ryu-suk knew it was over and activated a mysterious switch. It turned out that he was going to destroy the Air Corps, preferring to die rather than let others share the fruits of the Air Corps. The moment the switch was flipped, the Air Corps started to supply oxygen excessively, and 5 to 8 arrived just in time. The guards by Ryu-suk were quickly subdued, and he had no choice but to threaten 5 to 8 with Sa-wol, both pointing guns at each other. Until the end, Ryu-suk had no regrets, preferring to destroy the Air Corps rather than let the refugees use it. Thinking of the refugees who died because of him, 5 to 8 felt an overwhelming sadness. Suddenly, Sa-wol pushed the handle, turning the wheelchair in another direction, and 5 to 8 catches Ryu-suk distracted and fires several shots to finally put him away. In the end, they all escaped hand in hand before the Air Corps exploded. Ryu-suk, the main culprit, was finally eliminated, and they won the final victory. After that, the resettlement plan was officially launched. The government would abolish the grading system, and all refugees would be accepted, leaving no more unfairness in the world.